To release the brakes, you pump it up to 90 pounds of pressure. To apply the brakes, you take air out of the system. In fact, if you listen closely, you might be able to hear Engineer Doug apply the brakes. There they are right there. Hear the escaping air? See how we're slowing down a little? Engine 2, we got good brakes. Kick it off. Good release. High ball, running air, bear down. Hear how the steam-powered air compressor kicked on when I told him to kick off the brakes? That's because that air compressor is pumping up these cars to 90 pounds of pressure to release them. That's what that puffing sound you hear every now and then is. That's a steam-powered air compressor. All right, did you already forget about the view? It's okay. It's coming up on the left-hand side, about 3 cars ahead of where the steam engine is right now. So be looking on the left-hand side for this small break in the trees. Once you spot it, stare at it for as long as you can, and you'll see all the trees that grew in this entire valley in the last 100 years. You also see that big bald spot where they're getting all the decomposing granite. Ooh. Uh-oh, look at all that steam up there, ladies and gentlemen. Look. Right over, it blew up, sorry. No, that's not what happened. The technical term for that procedure, when you see all that steam blasting out the side of the locomotive, is known as a blowdown. And I'll tell you more about that when you're a little older. About 30 minutes from now, don't worry. Just don't miss that view on the left-hand side. And while you're checking out that view, I gotta make my way up to the front of this train, because I have to do a roll-by inspection. We like to inspect these trains as many times as humanly possible on every single trip. So in a moment, when you see me on the ground on the left-hand side of this train staring at the underside of these train cars as you all roll by me, try not to get offended if I don't wave howdy at you, because I really want to. It's just I gotta make sure we're all safe. Safety is the name of the game here on the steepest narrow gauge railroad in all of North America. We'll see you on a little bit. Now, way back in 1867, a gentleman by the name of Joseph Welch bought this piece of property with the intentions of clear cutting. He was going to chop all these trees down. But just before he did, he decided that he needed to show his wife how beautiful this ancient forest he just bought was. So he sent his wife a letter. Her name was Anna. Now, Anna received that letter from Joseph way out there in San Francisco. Upon receiving that old little letter, Anna hopped on a horse and then embark on a 3-day journey to get to here from San Francisco. Now, upon that 3-day journey, Anna passed through a bunch of pieces of property that had already been completely clear-cut. Basically a bunch of desolate wastelands full of nothing but stumps as far as her eyes could see for 3 days. So when Anna arrived on this ancient property and saw these majestic ancient old-growth coastal redwoods standing tall and proud, well, Anna thought it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen in her entire life. Now, when her husband, Joseph, told her about his intentions to chop all these trees down, that didn't go over too well at all. Nope. Anna became awfully cross with it, rightfully so, and then said something along the lines of,
"It's a shame you're gonna chop down all these trees, Joseph. The way you're chopping them down, there's gonna be nothing left for our children to appreciate when they get older."
That's about what she said. And on that day in 1867, something incredibly special happened. That didn't really happen every single day of the week of that time period. And unfortunately, to this day, that is that Joseph Welch listened to his wife. Yeah. Take notes, gentlemen. Sorry. Thanks to Anna, all these trees around here were spared for future generations, and the Welch family still owns this piece of property. That's right, this is private property. This is not a state park. That's next door to us, Henry Cow State Park. You should check him out if you got the time. It's definitely worth it. But why are we here? Well, I'll tell you, after he blows the whistle. Any second now. In 1959, our founder Norman Clark signed a lease agreement with the Welch family, allowing us access to their beautiful family forest for 100 years. Also allowing us access to build this recreation of a steam-powered narrow-gauge logging railroad right through the middle of it to showcase these ancient trees and the abilities of our antique locomotives to lovely people like you in the blue hat, or you in the blue jacket, or you with the straw hat, or any of you. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to come on down here to ride and support our lovely little railroad, our little family-owned and operated business, because without the help and support of amazing individuals like all of you, we would not be able to keep these pieces of history rolling at all. So thank you for coming on down and experiencing the Redwood Forest Narrow Gauge Steam Train in all our amazing. Thank you. See, I told you we'd get up to 10 miles an hour. I wasn't lying. direction. We're now heading down to 10.5% grade, the steepest pair of narrow gauge train tracks in this entire continent. Now that our train's heading back down to Spring Canyon, though, you'll be able to see those old burnt down trestles again. And if you're wondering to yourself, hey, so, I wonder why Roaring Camp never rebuilt their cool trestles. Well, that's a great thing to ask yourself. First off, I'll tell you. We've always wanted to rebuild these trestles, and we still want to rebuild them to this day. It's just that back in the day, in 1976, they never actually caught who was responsible for lighting these trestles on fire in the first place. And they were scared that they were going to come back. Now, the only reasons why we're pretty sure it was arson are pretty simple. Here they are. Reason number 1. There were 9 other trestle fires in California that same week that all lined up on a map in a straight line with ours right in the middle. A little too coincidental there. Reason number 2, which makes it much worse, is that those 9 other trestle fires were all located on active blocking railroads, which we've never Reason number 3, and the most obvious reason, all the instant gas cans we found under the trestle after we extinguished the fire. Kind of points at our a little bit. But if you'd ever wanted to see any photographs of what these amazing trestles looked like when they were in operation from only 1966 to 1976, you're in luck, because we just built a little makeshift museum here in Roaring Camp for the first time in 60 years. The museum is in the back of the general store. So if you go into the general store, go to the back, make a left, you'll be in that museum. Now in the corner of the museum is a little glass cabinet thingy, absolutely loaded with photographs of these amazing trestles when they were in service. There's also a whole bunch of other neat stuff in there too. You should totally check out if you got the spare time, because it's totally worth it, and that's because it's totally free. That's right, free. Look at the most bang for your buck if you got some spare time after this train ride. Stop by that pretty little museum at the back of the general store. It's definitely worth it. Now our train is currently backing into the middle of the giant loop that these 2 trestles form. Remember, there are 2 trestles here, the high trestle, W, and the low trestle. Trains coming up the mountain like we were doing earlier, but across that low trestle from left to right from our current perspective, across this shallow valley to the other side. Just before the low trestle hits the dirt over there on the other side of the valley to our right, it actually passed underneath the end of the high trestle. That's where the 2 trestles cross. The train tracks are continued on that little shelf of dirt you can see over there, where you can actually still see the train tracks today because we never actually removed them because we're actually replacing. The train tracks have made a sharp right-hand turn and passed right over the roof line of the last car just slightly behind us. You see those little flat spots back there even with the roof line? So now on the left-hand side of us, those train tracks continued on that sharp right-hand turn and that cut up there till they hit the high trestle and went over this whole valley once again, forming the big loop-de-loop that we're in the middle of right now. Kind of confusing, huh? Look at me here in the middle of the train. Yo. So the trains went from left to right on the low trestle. It goes underneath the high bridge right there. The train tracks then continue on that little shelf where you can see them right there. Sharp right-hand turn over the last car just behind it, and then right-hand turn around us to the high trestle.
Over there.
Now back when these trestles were working, this was an uninterrupted railroad, and it was a very common practice to run a 14-car train up this hill, pulled by 2 steam engines at the same time. That's when the locomotives at the front would go over the last car, with both of them being on different bridges right over there. Nowadays, because of the switchback and that big dirt hillside, we can only really fit a maximum of 6 cars to go up that switchback. But honestly, I don't think we can push anything more up that hill, considering we barely make it with 5. If you'd like to see any photographs of these trestles, you know what to do. Just told you. Stop by that free little museum in the back of the general store. It's definitely worth it. Now, if you've ever seen any movies portraying the Old West or maybe even the Old East, where they're building those train tracks across America by hand, using nothing but hand tools, and extreme amounts of manual labor to do it, then you already know exactly the way we maintain this narrow gauge railroad here, by hand. Because remember, this is 19th century technology being a narrow gauge railroad, and they didn't really make much modern track equipment for this kind of setup. So the next time you're watching one of those corny little western movies where they built those train tracks by hand all over one day, you can think of us. Poor employees who have drawing down railroad. I did get a chance of my gym membership though. Save me a few bucks, and that's important. Because working pay like this keep you as thin as a rail. Now, one of the tools we're using when we're working on these old train tracks is known as a spike maul. A spike maul is a 9-pound sledgehammer with a 4-foot handle. It's actually the infamous 9-pound hammer you hear about in all those old folk songs. The faces of the hammer are extended out by 8 inches on both sides of the hammer head, but they're only about 1 inch wide. If I lost you in there, that's okay. This tool looks exactly like a giant capital letter T. T as in trains. Now this tool is used to drive those railroad spikes into the wooden tie underneath that rail to hold the rail in place. But to drive those spikes into that tie, man, you gotta sweep this giant hammer behind you, bring it up and over your shoulder and straight down in front of you in a giant circular motion with extreme amounts of force, and more importantly, accuracy. Because if you're off by just a few millimeters to the left, right, center action, and so wink that giant hammer down on that tiny little railroad spike, you're actually going to shoot that spike out of the tie at Mach 3 of your coworker's shins. Tie got all those scars. Good times. Not really. Now, the first time you ever handled a spike ball to use, it's an impossible tool to use. You are swinging that thing wildly. You can't really hit a thing. Your coworkers are laughing at you and pointing and dodging road spikes for their lives. And you're looking at them as if they were superhuman, wondering how in the world are they actually swinging that giant hammer with such force and accuracy. Well, I can tell you, after a few years of practice with this horrible tool, unfortunately which I've had, eventually, you get the swing of it. Ooh, I heard an audible sigh on that. Did we warn you that this was the Terrible Fun Express? I don't think we did we? Sorry, don't worry. There's not much longer left of this trip. Just keep an eye out for the ROUSs. They are out here. They'll get you. Get some blank stares from some of you. I'm talking about the rodents of unusual sizes. Watch out, they'll get you. Alright, enough of that. Our train's now approaching a very special tree that's leading over the railroad at a 40-degree angle. There it is. Look at your engineer, Doug. He just gave that tree a high five, didn't he? He sure did. We all have our own strange rituals to keep that tree from leaning over anymore. Blocks the railroad. Doug likes to go to high five. I personally like to kick it, because that's how I roll. I like to kick it. But once you pass Leaning Tree, look off the right-hand side of the train for one last chance to view this entire valley. Look for that small break in the trees, just in case you missed that earlier. I don't want you to miss nothing out here. That's my job. Kind of. And keeping you safe. Please remain seated. There you go. Now, if you'd like to have a video of your whistle, you can in about 10 to 15 seconds. The whistle on the locomotive is from 1878. Yes, it's older than the locomotive. This is a single chime whistle. This is how steam locomotives would have sounded from about 1840 to about 1890. Now, the next time you hear that whistle in theory, our train should be crossing the sharpest curving passenger-carrying trestle in all of North America again. This time giving all of you on the right-hand side of this train a fabulous opportunity to get a video, just like everyone on the left-hand side of this train had earlier if they were paying attention to anything I was saying. Try left-hand side, you had your chance, I tried to warn you. This will be the right-hand side chance, but please remain seated for the remainder of this trip. in particular on the trestle. The trestle is 210 feet long. It's also 42 feet tall, and it's a little difficult to stick the landing from 42 feet in the air. I knew a guy who tried once. The keyword there was new, so please remain seated. If you're concerned about me running around this train, hopping on and off this thing like a wild man, I do appreciate your concern, but y'all don't gotta worry about little old me, because I have training that helps keep me safe. Couldn't resist, ladies and gentlemen. We're not out of the woods yet. Took a second, didn't it? Yeah, it's all downhill from here, ladies and gentlemen. Literally. There's that old trestle down there. See how sharp this curve is? Now, I don't know if you've ever accidentally boiled a whole pot of water down to nothing like I did last night attempting to make mac and cheese. But if you've done this, you'll find at the bottom of those pots, once all the water has evaporated out, there's a whole bunch of random minerals left at the bottom of that pot. All those naturally occurring minerals in the water get left in that pot as the water boils away, right? Well, the same thing occurs to a steam locomotive, especially after you boil away 700 gallons of water like we just did going up and down this mountain once. It leaves a whole bunch of random minerals at the bottom of that locomotive's boiler that really mess it up really bad. So to help counter this issue, all steam engines in North America are equipped with a very special valve, known as a blow-down valve. It's basically a large hole at the lowest point in that locomotive's boiler where all that sediment likes to build up, you know, the low spot. And when our fireman Russ opens up that special valve, it lets a whole bunch of water and steam jet out of the side of the boiler with 200 pounds of pressure behind it, taking all that sediment right out of the boiler with it in a giant cloud of steam. Like you all saw on top of Bear Mountain, remember? Told you I'd tell you about it. In a few moments, all of you will have the opportunity to witness the blowdown, and maybe even film it if you want. We're going to keep rolling forward here a little bit further. You're then going to hear the whistle. The whistle is a fabulous cue for all of you to start filming. Because about 30 seconds after you hear the whistle, our train is going to cruise right next to a little man-made lake. And if no one's standing there, that's usually where our fireman Russ likes to let that blowdown go down. So have your cameras ready when you hear the whistle, because you won't want to miss this. ladies and gentlemen, the cleanest turtles in the entire western United States. That's right, we steam clean them here. They love it. Till they get too close. Now if you're feeling a little hungry, oh, look at all those turtles down there. If you're feeling a little hungry or thirsty after your incredibly long journey on our short railroad, you may want to stop by Georgie's Cookhouse here in town. They should be open, offering the finest amusement park food and refreshments in all of Belton. And don't forget about that lovely little museum I told you about in the back of the general store. It's definitely worth checking out. On the left-hand side of the screen is what's left of our sawmill. It was built to represent a temporary sawmill from the 1800s, and unfortunately it was built a little too realistic and lasted just about as long as a temporary sawmill from the 1800s would have lasted. About 30 years before. We built a lot of the buildings you still see here at Roaring Camp using that sawmill, with trees that fell on the railroad. The only lumber we're allowed to move off that hill is the stuff that's directly marked for tree, remember? Back in the day, we used to take it down here, and there was keep it on the property and build a lot of these buildings. So when you get back to the train station, look at the boards on that building. You'll see circular saw blade marks on them. That's from that sawmill. The boiler that powered that sawmill, the big gray thing, the cylinder, that was actually used to build the Bay Bridge. We found it abandoned in an Oakland scrapyard in the 60s, brought it here and restored it for our old sawmill. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated until you hear one short whistle blast. We gotta line up this antique steam engine perfectly with that old water tower, so we might move back and forth a few times. So wait for that whistle before you stand. But on behalf of our engineer Doug, on the whistle and throttle and brakes, your fireman Russ, on the bell and blow down, and your conductor, on the annoying voice. I'd like to thank you all for coming on down. I hope you've all enjoyed this trip and maybe you learned something. If you did, remember my name is Charles De Felippis. If you did not, my name is Sean. Now wait for that whistle. Thank you, everybody. Welcome on back to Roaring Camp. Have a lovely rest of your day, and thank you once again for choosing Roaring Camp Airlines. Please watch